The Masters begins next week. It's this year's first major golf tournament. Four-time champion Tiger Woods is returning. He's coming off a fifth-place finish at the Arnold Palmer Invitational earlier this month. Now, Woods is the 8-1 favorite to win the Masters ahead of challengers like Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy.
A new biography, Tiger Woods, uncovers new information about his life and career. It is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS. The co-authors, Armen Keteyian and Benedict, did more than 400 interviews with people close to Tiger. Welcome.
Thanks. We're glad to be here.
So let me ask you, you guys spent 3 years researching and interviewing more than 250 people for this book, but Tiger himself declined to be interviewed. Clearly you went after him. Why did he decline?
Well, Tiger doesn't really cooperate on projects like this. Historically, he has not done anything that doesn't benefit Tiger or that has his seal of approval. But Jeff and I went to his people very early on, 2 years before the book was published, and we said we'd like to sit down just to discuss the possibility of interviewing Tiger. And they came back with the language that said, before we would even consider meeting with you, you have to tell us, A, everybody you've talked to, B, everything they said, and C, we want a list of questions prior to the interview. And you know, 60 Minutes doesn't do that stuff.
Right.
Nobody in this building does that.
Right.
And so we said, I think we're going to agree to disagree on this.
He did give the okay, though, for his chiropractor, his longtime chiropractor, to talk, which leads into the questions about performance-enhancing drugs. What were you able to find out?
Well, I'm going to let Armen answer that one just because he spent more time on that than I did.
Well, there's one chapter called Miracle Workers, which I spent the better part of a year in one form or fashion working on. And in the end, there was all sorts of speculation, you know, how fast he grew, the size of his arms, the size of his chest, the amount of injuries that he had, all telltale signs of performance-enhancing drugs. To Team Tiger, that's the third rail. If you're wrong or you allege something and you don't have the facts to back it up, it's a guaranteed lawsuit. What we were able to do, and you mentioned it, is Dr. Mark Lindsay, the chiropractor from Toronto who worked on Tiger for hundreds of hours in 2008 and 2009, who had his hands on Tiger more than any person ever, has a declaration in the book that Tiger agreed in a waiver of a doctor-patient waiver to allow Mark to write it, says, in Dr. Lindsay's opinion, Tiger did not use performance-enhancing drugs because he would have felt, his body would have felt different. And he's felt bodies that have had the use of performance-enhancing drugs. So it is the most definitive, authoritative statement to date, draws a line in the sand that no one's ever drawn before.
Jeff, here in America, we love comeback stories. We love people, especially our athletes, who come back from injury or personal adversity. Tiger seems to be on that comeback trail. He's had numerous back surgeries, but he's playing better than he's ever played. Do you think he really is on that comeback? And will the public accept him the way that they did back in the day?
Well, I think he's playing better than he has in a long time. I don't know if he's playing better than he's ever played, but he's had this long period of time where he's been basically immobile, where he couldn't get out of bed in the morning without assistance, where he couldn't swing a club. He couldn't even kick soccer balls in the backyard with his kids. I think one of the reasons that there's this enthusiasm around him is because for so long when he was playing better than everyone else, no one could relate to him because he was so much better and so much bigger than everybody else, not just in golf, but in sports everywhere. Suddenly, he's looked vulnerable for the last 8 or 9 years. He's had issues outside the ropes. We've seen things about him that we never saw before, and he's more relatable now. I mean, the fact that he's come back from these back surgeries, no one thought he'd be able to do that. And I think one of the things he's more likable now is because he's more like us now.
He's more human than he's ever been.
Because he was a freak in nature when he was at the highest levels, and you're right. I mean, he's been, you know, he hasn't done well in such a long time. When I said he's playing better than ever before, it's like in my mind,
in the last 5 years.
Yeah, you know, we don't recall the Tiger of old, but my friends and I used to say he's sort of a freak of nature. Like the way God built him is why he's so good.
He played like a machine.
Right.
From the time he was, you could go back to the time he was 6 or 7 years old. That was the beginning of the machine. And certainly when he turned pro, or even back to him winning 3 consecutive United States junior amateurs, 3 consecutive U.S. amateurs, the Masters at 97, the great run he had in the early 2000s. He was unbeatable in many ways, but he was unrelatable in other ways. We all got to thrill at what we saw on Sunday and experience that. He lived it, and it's a very different existence for somebody inside his world, and not a very happy existence.
Because the thing about that Tiger is we didn't know much about him as a human being. I'm wondering if you think the scandal, the women, the divorce, even maybe, you know, being pulled over while under the influence, if as tragic as it is, there was benefit to it for him.
Without question.
That he evolved as a person.
I'm not sure he was evolving so much post 2009 with the scandal, because I think he was still being managed very carefully because there was so much at stake. Hundreds of millions of dollars really over time with all his sponsorships, even though he lost a lot. But his brand and his image was paramount to him and Team Tiger. I think the less than a year ago, finding himself on the side of the road in Florida with a rock star cocktail of opiates in his system was the bottom for him, and particularly as it relates to his kids. Do I really want to be that kind of dad for them? The back fusion surgery changed him physically. I think the incident on the side of the road changed him spiritually and emotionally, and I think what we're seeing now is a Tiger Woods that we've never seen before, and as Jeff said, he's so much more relatable and so much more enjoyable to watch.
So then who's the real Tiger Woods? The gambling, Las Vegas? You talked to a club owner who said when Tiger Woods got famous, he got mean. Is that the real guy, or is this the real guy?
I think they're all of him. It's the arc of his life. That's what makes the book so interesting. Is there were times when we were writing it, when we would talk, and I'm like, I don't really like this guy very much right now. And then there were other times where we'd say, I feel sad, sorry for him.
I wonder, Jeff, if, and I don't know this at all, but the golf world versus, like, for example, the NFL or the NBA or the NHL, where we don't mind necessarily if athletes are inscrutable in those sports, because as long as they perform on the field in a team environment, that's cool with us. You know, you can be, I mean, even Tom Brady, we don't really know Tom Brady. He does his thing and he has his books and stuff, but we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. There's not as much umbrage directed at his way as there was for Tiger. Is it because he was a solo, he was by himself, standing on that course, and just to be laid low like this is perhaps what's made him a little bit more relatable, because maybe they expect golfers to be relatable?
I don't think so.
Like Greg Norman is relatable, right? I mean,
but
those guys.
I think what was different about Tiger was that he had the animosity between him and the press dates all the way back to before he even turned pro. And
when he was in college, right? He was not known to be a nice person in college.
14 years old. You can go back into his teenage years.
A lot of that stems from his dad. I mean, a lot of that animosity started from his parents, mostly his father, when Tiger was still a teenager. By the time Tiger turns pro, there's already a wall between him and the press that are covering him. Usually there's this collegiality in golf between the reporters who cover golf and the guys who play golf. There was no collegiality when Tiger entered the tour. There was a wall up, it was there, and the wall got thicker and bigger as he got greater and greater. So I think the scrutiny about him was that they didn't get along well, and he had agents that kept the press at arm's distance. They would sometimes block reporters from coming into the locker room at PGA tournaments. That was just never done before until he came along. And, you know, we made a reference in there to him feeling like he was the fifth Beatle when he joined the PGA Tour, and there were guys on tour that had been on tour for 20 years that didn't act like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that as he gets better and better, he becomes more and more distant. And so what we know about Tiger is from a Nike commercial or an American Express commercial or a press release that gets put out by his agent. But when he does a press conference after a tournament, he's talking about the shot on the 17th. He's not talking about life and the things that really matter. And I think for the first time ever, those things are now, they came under the light when he crashed his car. I mean, suddenly we started looking at, well, who is, we thought that guy was invincible. And then he plowed into a fire hydrant and was found on the ground and taken away in an ambulance, and people started asking, what is going on here? So the guy that was in Vegas and winning tournaments, he is that guy. But he's also a human being who has vulnerabilities. We just never saw him before.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a Greek tale.
It very much is,
It's
because now he's been laid low, and the press, you know, it almost feels as he's learned this lesson. And I'm not saying that, you know, reporters are not subject are the friends of these subjects that we cover, but certainly, as you point out, the
golf
golfers
is different.
right? They have a little bit of
It's a very
like,
genteel sport.
I mean, even Muhammad Ali had Howard Cosell, right? That he would trust and talk to, and so when things went wrong in Ali's life, he was able to reach out to Cosell and say, "Let me tell you my side of the story." Right?
There hasn't been this book, I think, is so far ahead of what's been written previously, because Tiger, you have to go back to really 1997 when Charlie Pierce and Gary Smith, two of the best sports writers in the country, wrote almost back-to-back pieces. Tiger, Sportsman of the Year by Gary Smith, The Chosen One, Charlie Pierce and GQ in April of 97. You almost have to go back 20 years to find a piece that Tiger really cooperated with, other than the Time magazine interview he did with Lauren Rubenstein on the eve of his 40th birthday. But there were reasons that was done to benefit TGR Design and his new brand. So to try to understand Tiger, we were like Tigerologists in terms of archaeologists, sifting through all of these pieces of his life to put this mosaic together that really hasn't ever been put together before. And it's fascinating because it's Shakespearean. You mentioned Greek. We were in the Shakespeare world.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating. I'm sort of almost halfway through.
And we love the cover, by the way.
Amazing.
Tiger's staring back at you.
Yeah. Armen Keteyian, Jeff Benedict, thank you so much.
Thank you.